It's 2 a.m. You're lying in bed. You have to be up in 5 hours, and your brain has decided that right now, in the dark, in the silence, is the perfect time to replay that thing you said at a party in 2016. Not to fix it, not to learn from it, just to experience it again in full detail with bonus cringe. And then while you're already there, your brain pivots smoothly to whether you locked the front door, what your boss meant by that email, a song you haven't thought about in 11 years, and a growing suspicion that you might have left the stove on. You didn't leave the stove on. You know you didn't, but now you're thinking about it anyway. This experience is so universal that it has its own name in some cultures. The Buddhists called it monkey mind. The idea that the untrained brain swings from thought to thought, the way a monkey swings from branch to branch, restless, purposeless, impossible to stop. But here's what nobody tells you. Your brain isn't malfunctioning at 2 a.m. It isn't broken. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do. And the reason it does this at night, specifically in the dark, when you are trying to sleep, is one of the more quietly unsettling things evolutionary biology has to say about the human condition. Let's start with what your brain actually is, not in a philosophical sense, in a practical evolutionary sense. Your brain is a threat detection system that got so good at its job it started inventing threats when there weren't any. For most of human history, the night was dangerous, not inconveniently dark, actually dangerous. Predators moved at night. Rival groups attacked at night. The darkness that modern humans experience as peaceful quiet was, for 100,000 years, the most statistically risky part of the day. The humans who survived long enough to become your ancestors were not the ones who slept deeply and peacefully through every noise. They were the ones whose brains stayed partially alert, scanning, processing, ready to respond. Light sleepers, anxious minds, people whose thoughts kept circling back to unresolved problems. These were the survivors. Their hyperactive nighttime brains were a feature, not a bug. The problem is that evolution moves slowly and modern life moved fast. In the last 200 years, humans created electric lighting, locked doors, police forces, fire alarms, and sleeping arrangements that are, by any objective measure, the safest our species has ever known. But your brain doesn't know that. Your brain is running firmware that was written for a world where something might actually eat you in the night, and in the absence of real threats, it goes looking for threats to process: the email, the party, the stove, the mortgage, the vague sense that you forgot something important. These are not real dangers, but they register in the same neurological systems that once processed actual predators. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a tiger and a work deadline. Both feel urgent. Both feel worth staying awake for. Here's where it gets more interesting. There's a specific phenomenon researchers have studied called the Zeigarnik effect. The basic finding discovered by Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik in the 1920s is that the human brain holds on to unfinished tasks much more persistently than completed ones. Once something is done, the brain can release it. But unresolved problems, unfinished conversations, things that don't have a clear ending, the brain keeps returning to them involuntarily, like a tongue finding a loose tooth. During the day, new stimuli constantly interrupt this process. There's always something else to focus on, but at night, when the stimulation stops and the environment goes quiet, those unresolved loops rise to the surface. Everything you haven't finished thinking about during the day was never fully processed. The brain just queued it up. And now, with nothing else competing for attention, the queue runs. This is also why the specific thoughts that visit you at 2 a.m. tend to be the ones you've been avoiding. The conversation you should have had, the decision you've been putting off, the thing you said that you wish you could take back. The brain isn't trying to torture you, it's trying to finish something. Avoidance doesn't close a mental loop, it just delays the processing. And in the quiet of the night, with your defenses down and no distractions available, the brain finally gets uninterrupted access to do the work you wouldn't let it do while you were busy. There's a physiological layer to this as well. Cortisol, the hormone most associated with stress and alertness, follows a daily rhythm in the human body. It naturally rises in the early morning to prepare you for waking and drops in the evening to allow sleep. But chronic stress, irregular schedules, screen exposure, and the general texture of modern life can flatten this rhythm or shift it. For many people, cortisol levels that should be declining at night are still elevated, keeping the brain in a state of low-level arousal that makes genuine rest difficult and ruminative thinking almost inevitable. The biology and the behavior feed each other. The more you think, the harder sleep becomes. The harder sleep becomes, the less equipped your brain is to regulate its own emotional processing the next day, which makes everything slightly harder to handle, which gives you more things to think about at night. Round and round. There is, buried in all of this, something almost worth appreciating. The fact that your brain runs unresolved problems at night is not a design failure. It is an attempt, however clumsy, to help you. The 2 a.m. replay of the 2016 party isn't random. Something about that interaction still feels unresolved. The recurring thought about the email isn't paranoia. There's something about that situation the brain hasn't finished categorizing. The nighttime mind is a slow, imprecise, frequently counterproductive problem solver. But it is trying to solve problems. It just does it at the worst possible time, without your permission, using emotional processing methods that feel more like punishment than therapy. The humans who came before you stared into darkness and listened for sounds that might mean death. You stare at the ceiling and revisit conversations that ended awkwardly 3 years ago. Different content, same system, same ancient brain, running the same ancient program, in a world the program was never designed for. The stove is off. You know it's off. But somewhere between your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala, there's a very old part of your brain that was designed to keep you alive in the dark. And it is doing its job. It has always done its job. It just never quite got the message that the job was finished.